The galaxy remembered the Dominion. Every species that had ever looked upon the stars knew their name. Every civilization that had risen and fallen across 10,000 years had trembled at the mere mention of their war fleets. There were giants among the stars, their bodies towering 3 meters tall, covered in natural armor that could deflect energy weapons. Their muscles were dense as neutron matter. Their bones were reinforced with metals that formed naturally within their bodies. They did not need weapons to kill. They could crush starship hulls with their bare hands. For 10,000 years they had conquered everything they touched. Their empire stretched across 200 star systems. They had destroyed 17 major civilizations. They had enslaved 43 species. They had never lost a war. They had never retreated from a battle. Their strength echoed through time like thunder that never stopped rolling across the sky. The Galactic Council feared them. The council was made of the surviving species, the ones who had bent their knees and offered tribute rather than face extinction, though with their fragile crystalline bodies, the who floated through space on gas bladders, the whose soft bodies required water at all times. They were weak species, prey species. They survived by being useful by building their ships, growing their food, mining their metals. Admiral stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest. He was old by standards, nearly 400 years. His armor skin had turned from bright gold to deep bronze with age. Scars covered his body, each one a memory of battle, each one a trophy of victory. He had personally killed 10,000 enemies across his lifetime. He had crushed rebellions on 20 worlds. He had watched civilizations burn and felt nothing but satisfaction. Today, he looked at the holographic display before him and felt something he had not felt in 3 centuries. He felt curious. "Report again," he commanded. His voice was like stones grinding together. "Tell me about these creatures." His science officer, a younger named, stepped forward. "The species calls itself humanity, Admiral. They originate from a planet in the outer spiral arm, a planet they call Earth." "Earth," repeated. The word felt strange on his tongue. "What do we know of it?" "It is a death world, Admiral." His eyes narrowed. Death worlds were rare. They were planets with conditions so extreme that life should not exist there. Gravity crushing, atmosphere poisonous, temperatures that could freeze or burn. Most death worlds produced nothing but bacteria, simple organisms that could survive anything but could never grow beyond microscopic existence. "Continue," said. "Earth has a gravity of nearly 10 standard units," said. "Its atmosphere contains a highly reactive gas called oxygen at dangerous concentrations. The planet experiences extreme temperature variations, violent weather patterns, and is covered largely in a substance they call water, which is toxic to most known life forms. And intelligent life evolved there." "Yes, Admiral, not just intelligent life. These humans have achieved space travel. They have colonized dozens of worlds. They have built a military force." Paused. "They have refused our demands for surrender." Smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. When a smiled, it revealed rows of teeth designed for tearing through armor. "Refused." 3 times, Admiral. We sent emissaries demanding their submission to the Dominion. 3 times they sent our emissaries back. The 3rd time they sent them back in pieces. Laughed. The sound echoed through the bridge like an earthquake. His officers looked nervous. The Admiral laughing was never a good sign. It meant he was anticipating violence. "These humans sound entertaining," said. "Show me their warriors." The holographic display shifted. Images appeared, captured by surveillance drones that had observed human military forces, studied them carefully. The humans were small, barely 2 meters tall at their largest. Their bodies were soft, covered in thin skin with no natural armor. They had no claws, no fangs, no obvious natural weapons. They looked weak. They looked fragile. But something about them made ancient instincts stir, something in the way they moved, something in the way they carried themselves. There was no fear in their posture. There was no submission in their eyes. "They are confident," observed. Foolishly so, agreed. They cannot possibly understand what they face. No species has ever defeated the Dominion. Their confidence is born of ignorance. Perhaps, said, but he continued watching the images. He saw human soldiers training. They ran distances that would exhaust most species. They lifted weights that seemed impossible for their small frames. They fought each other with a savagery that surprised him. And when they fell, when they were knocked down, they got back up. Every single time they got back up. What do our analysts say about their combat capabilities? Asked. Their technology is inferior to ours, Admiral. Their ships are smaller, their weapons less powerful. Our projections suggest a fleet ratio of 3-to-1 in our favor. A standard conquest operation should take no more than 6 standard cycles. And their ground forces? Hesitated. The analysts are uncertain about ground combat projections. Uncertain. These humans come from a death world, Admiral. Their physical capabilities are unusual. They can operate in temperature ranges that would kill most species. They can survive injuries that should be fatal. They can continue fighting even when damaged. They do not seem to know when they are supposed to die. Found this interesting. Elaborate. Our surveillance observed an incident on one of their colony worlds. A human soldier was struck by weapons fire that destroyed most of his left arm. By all medical understanding, he should have gone into shock and died. Instead, he used his remaining arm to continue firing his weapon while crawling toward his wounded companions. He killed 7 enemy combatants before he finally collapsed. He survived. One incident proves nothing. There are thousands of such incidents, Admiral. These humans have a saying that our translators have difficulty interpreting. They say they are too angry to die. We are uncertain if this is metaphorical or if they have some biological mechanism that allows emotional states to override physical limitations. Was quiet for a long moment. He had conquered many worlds. He had faced many enemies. Most of them died easily. They saw the fleets and they surrendered, or they fought briefly and were crushed. None of them had ever been described as too angry to die. When did they first contact us? Asked. 40 standard cycles ago, Admiral. One of our patrol fleets encountered their colony ships in the neutral zone. And what happened? Shifted uncomfortably. The patrol fleet demanded their surrender as per standard protocol. The human ships refused. When the patrol fleet moved to disable their vessels, the humans opened fire. The battle lasted 7 standard hours. And the patrol fleet? Destroyed, Admiral, all 12 ships. The humans lost 4 vessels but rescued all surviving crew. They did not leave their dead behind. They retrieved every body. His eyes widened. A patrol fleet destroyed by a species with inferior technology. That was unexpected. Was this reported to High Command? It was classified, Admiral. High Command did not wish to cause panic among the subjugated species. A single patrol fleet loss could be attributed to surprise and unusual circumstances. What unusual circumstances? The humans employed tactics we did not anticipate. They used their smaller ships not as weapons platforms but as delivery systems. They launched boarding parties onto our vessels. They fought hand-to-hand inside our ships. They boarded vessels. Could not believe what he was hearing. No species had ever boarded a ship and survived. Warriors in close combat were unstoppable. Their strength was legend. Yes, Admiral. The internal security recordings were recovered from the wreckage. Would you like to see them? Nodded. The display shifted to show the interior of a warship. He watched as breaching pods crashed through the hull. He watched as human soldiers poured out, covered in armored suits that made them look like mechanical monsters. He watched as they met the defenders. What he saw next changed everything he thought he knew about war. The humans were small, yes. They were soft, yes. But they moved with a speed that his eyes could barely follow. They ducked under strikes that should have crushed them. They fired weapons at joints and weak points with impossible accuracy. They worked together with a coordination that seemed almost telepathic, covering each other, supporting each other, moving as one organism with dozens of bodies. And when it got close enough to grab one of them, when a warrior finally caught a human soldier and prepared to tear it apart, the human did something impossible. It smiled. It looked up at the holding it, and it pressed a device on its chest, and the resulting explosion killed both of them along with 3 others standing nearby. They killed themselves, whispered. They sacrificed themselves to take out enemies. Yes, Admiral, this was not an isolated incident. When cornered, when capture seemed inevitable, the humans consistently chose death over surrender. They chose death that would hurt their enemies. They chose death that would help their companions. They did not seem afraid of dying. They seemed to embrace it as one more weapon in their arsenal. Watched the rest of the recording in silence. He watched as the human boarding party fought through the ship, deck by deck, corridor by corridor. He watched as they killed with bullets and blades and explosives, and when their weapons ran empty with their bare hands. He watched as a human soldier, bleeding from a dozen wounds, strangled an officer with a piece of cable, refusing to let go even as they crushed its ribs. When it was over, when the recording ended with the ship's reactor detonating, stood in silence for a long time. How many humans were in that boarding party? He finally asked. 47, Admiral. And how many did they kill? 312, Admiral, plus the 200 who died when the reactor exploded. Did the mathematics. 47 humans had killed over 500 before being stopped. That was a ratio that should have been impossible. That was a ratio that suggested something terrifying. These creatures, said slowly, are not like the others we have conquered. No, Admiral, they are not. What happened after that battle? What has happened in the 40 cycles since? Brought up a star map. It showed space in gold and human space in blue. The humans retreated after the initial contact. We assumed they had learned their lesson. We were wrong. They spent the next 30 cycles preparing. Preparing for what? War, Admiral, full-scale war. They unified their colonies under a single military command. They built shipyards in hidden locations throughout their territory. They increased their population growth through artificial means. They trained millions of soldiers. They developed new weapons. They studied us. Studied us. Every piece of wreckage from that first battle they recovered. Every dead they examined. They learned our biology, our technology, our tactics. They learned our weaknesses. Have no weaknesses. Was silent. Speak, commanded. The humans believe otherwise, Admiral. 10 cycles ago, they began a systematic campaign against our outer colonies. They struck quickly without warning. They did not attempt to hold territory. They struck, caused maximum damage, and before our fleets could respond. Hit-and-run tactics, cowardice. Effective cowardice, Admiral. They have destroyed 37 military installations. They have killed over 100,000 warriors. They have captured 3 of our shipyards and taken everything inside. They have freed the slave populations on a dozen worlds. Freed. The slaves now fight alongside them, Admiral. The in those systems have joined the human military. So have the. The humans do not enslave. They offer partnership. They offer freedom in exchange for alliance. Felt something cold in his chest. It was not fear. Did not feel fear, but it was something like concern, something like the recognition of a genuine threat. They are building an alliance against us, he realized. Yes, Admiral, they call it the Coalition of Free Species. 17 species have joined so far, more are considering it. The Galactic Council. Nervous, Admiral. They have not declared support for either side, but there are rumors of secret negotiations with the humans. Turned away from the display. He walked to the observation window and looked out at the stars. His fleet surrounded him, 300 warships carrying over 1 million warriors. It was the largest fleet the Dominion had ever assembled. It should have been enough to conquer any enemy. But for the first time in his long life, wondered if it would be enough. "Tell me about their leader," he said. "Admiral," replied, "a female of their species. She rose through their military ranks during the initial contact period. She commanded the human forces in over 40 engagements. She has never lost a battle." "Never." "Never, Admiral. Her tactics are unpredictable. She does not follow standard military doctrine. She does not behave rationally. She takes risks that should result in disaster, but somehow they do not. Our analysts believe she may be mentally unstable. Or she may be brilliant." "That is also possible, Admiral." "Watch the stars for a long moment. What is our mission?" "We are to proceed to the human home system. We are to destroy there. We are to eliminate their species completely. High Command believes that if we remove the humans, the coalition will collapse. The other species joined because they believe the humans could protect them. Without humans, they will submit once more." "And what does High Command expect us to face when we arrive?" "According to intelligence, the humans have concentrated their military forces around Earth. Approximately 200 ships. We outnumber them significantly." "Numbers mean little against these creatures." "High Command disagrees, Admiral. They believe the patrol fleet loss was an anomaly. They believe our superior strength and technology will prevail." Smiled again. It was a grim smile, the smile of a predator who had finally found prey worthy of the hunt. "High Command has not seen what I have seen," said. "They have not watched humans fight. They do not understand what we face." "Do you believe we will lose, Admiral?" Considered the question carefully. He thought about everything he had learned. He thought about creatures that came from a death world, creatures that breathed poison and thrived in crushing gravity. He thought about soldiers who would kill themselves to hurt their enemies. He thought about a species that did not know how to surrender, that did not know how to give up, that fought with a fury that seemed to transcend physical limitations. "I believe," said slowly, "that this will be the greatest battle our species has ever fought. I believe that many of us will die. I believe that these humans will hurt us in ways we cannot imagine." "Then why do we proceed?" "Because we are," said. "Because we do not run from battle. Because our strength has echoed through time for 10,000 years, and we will not let these creatures silence that echo. We will face them. We will fight them. And we will learn if the legends of the Death World warriors are true." He turned back to his officers. "Set course for the human home system. Maximum speed. We arrive in 3 standard cycles." The fleet moved. 300 ships carrying 1 million warriors, the greatest military force the galaxy had ever seen, racing toward a small blue world at the edge of known space. Racing toward creatures that should not exist, that should not be able to fight, that should not be able to threaten the masters of the galaxy. Racing toward Earth. Racing toward humanity. Racing toward a battle that would change the galaxy forever. None of them knew it yet, but the legends of strength that had echoed through time were about to meet something stronger, something fiercer, something that had evolved on a world that tried to kill it every single day and had survived anyway. The Armada was waiting for them. And humanity was ready. Admiral stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance and watched the stars. She was 53 years old, her dark hair streaked with gray, her face marked with lines that came from decades of war and worry. She had been a soldier since she was 18. She had fought in the colony wars, the Mars Rebellion, the Jupiter Uprising. She had seen humanity at its worst and at its best. Nothing had prepared her for this. The holographic display before her showed the approaching fleet. 300 ships, spreading across space like a golden tide. Each ship was enormous, built for war by creatures that had made war their religion. The smallest of their vessels was twice the size of humanity's largest battleship. The largest, the flagship called Eternal Conquest, was a mobile fortress that could have housed a small city. "Time to arrival?" asked. 6 hours, Admiral, her tactical officer replied. Commander James was young, barely 30, but he had proven himself in a dozen battles. His hands moved across the holographic controls with practiced ease. "They're not trying to hide their approach. They want us to see them coming." "Intimidation tactics," said. "They want us afraid." "Are we?" Smiled. It was a thin smile, sharp as a blade. "We're human, James. Fear is our oldest friend. We just don't let it make our decisions." The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of machines and the distant vibration of the ship's engines. Around, her officers worked with focused efficiency. They had drilled for this moment for years. They had trained and prepared and sacrificed everything for the chance to defend their home. Earth floated behind them, a blue marble wrapped in white clouds, beautiful and fragile against the infinite black. 8 billion people lived on that world. 8 billion lives depending on the 200 ships that stood between them and extinction. "Admiral," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the flagship. They're demanding to speak with you." "Put them through." The holographic display shifted to show a face that would haunt human nightmares for generations. Admiral looked like something from ancient mythology, a giant covered in golden armor that was actually his own skin, with eyes that burned like red stars. When he spoke, his voice made the bridge speakers crackle. "Human Admiral said, I am Admiral of the Dominion. I command the fleet that will destroy your world. I offer you one final chance to save some of your people. Surrender now, and we will spare your civilian population. They will serve the Dominion as slaves, but they will live. Refuse, and every human in existence will die today." Listen to the translation implant in her ear, waiting until finished speaking. Then she leaned forward, making sure they could see her face clearly. "Admiral," she said, "I appreciate the offer. Let me make a counteroffer. Turn your fleet around and go home. Never return to human space. Do this and we'll let you live. Refuse, and every in your fleet will die today." There was a long pause, then laughed, a sound like thunder rolling across mountains. "You are either very brave or very stupid, human, perhaps both. Do you understand what you face? 300 ships, 1 million warriors. We have conquered species 1,000 times more powerful than yours." "Maybe," said, "but you've never faced us. And what makes you different from all the others who fell before our might?" Smile widened. "We evolved on a death world, Admiral. Every creature on our planet is trying to kill us. The air we breathe is poison. The star that gives us life is constantly bombarding us with radiation. We hunt the apex predators of our world for sport. We climb the highest mountains just because they're there. We dive to the bottom of our oceans just to see what's down there. We are the most dangerous thing our planet ever produced, and our planet is one of the most dangerous places in the galaxy." She stood up, letting see her full height, small by standards but straight-backed and unafraid. "You've conquered species that evolved in paradise, Admiral. Species that never had to fight for survival, that never had to struggle just to exist. We're not like them. We've been at war with our own world since the first human ancestor climbed down from a tree. We've been fighting and dying and refusing to give up for 200,000 years. Your species has been conquering for 10,000 years. We've been surviving for 20 times that long." She paused, letting her words sink in. "You want to know what makes us different? We don't know how to quit. We don't know how to surrender. We don't know how to die when we're supposed to. And when you come for our home, for our families, for everything we love, we will show you exactly what that means." Stared at her for a long moment. His red eyes narrowed, studying her face, looking for signs of fear, of weakness, of bluster. He found none. "You truly believe you can win," he said, sounding almost surprised. "I know we can." "Then you are fools, but brave fools. Perhaps you will give us an interesting battle before you die." The transmission cut off. turned back to her officers. They were staring at her with expressions ranging from terror to fierce pride. She looked at each of them in turn. "You all knew this day would come," she said. "From the moment we first encountered we knew they would eventually come for Earth. We've spent 4 decades preparing. Every ship in this fleet was built for this battle. Every weapon was designed to hurt these specific enemies. Every soldier was trained to fight these specific opponents." She walked to the center of the bridge, where a holographic display showed the positions of her fleet. 200 ships, spread in a formation that looked almost like wings, with Earth protected at the center. "They are strong," continued. "They're tough and powerful, and they've been winning wars for 10,000 years, but they've never fought an enemy that refused to play by their rules. They expect us to meet them head-on, fleet against fleet, warrior against warrior. They expect us to fight the way everyone else has always fought them." She touched a control, and the display changed. It showed hidden weapons platforms scattered throughout the system. It showed satellites disguised as debris. It showed asteroid bases and moon installations, and 1,000 other surprises that they knew nothing about. "We're not going to fight their kind of war. We're going to fight our kind of war. Dirty, clever, merciless, and without a single ounce of fair play. Because this isn't about honor or glory or proving ourselves. This is about survival. This is about protecting our home and our families and our future. And we will do whatever it takes to win." She turned to her communications officer. "Signal the fleet. All ships prepare for battle. Execute Operation Harvest." The next 6 hours passed in tense preparation. Ships moved into position. Weapons systems charged. Crews said prayers to whatever gods they believed in and wrote final messages to families they might never see again. The fleet grew larger on the displays, a golden tide rolling toward the small blue world that humanity called home. Admiral watched Earth grow larger as his fleet approached. It was a beautiful world, he had to admit. Blue and green and white, with the silver specks of orbital stations and defense platforms surrounding it. It looked peaceful. It looked fragile. "All ships prepare for attack formation," he commanded. "We will break through their defensive lines, destroy their fleet, and then begin the orbital bombardment. I want Earth to burn." His officers acknowledged. Around him, 300 ships began to shift position, forming the traditional attack wedge that had crushed so many enemies before. The formation was optimized for overwhelming force, designed to smash through enemy defenses like a hammer through glass. They were 50,000 kilometers from the first human defense line when the space around them began to change. "Admiral," his sensor officer shouted with sudden alarm. "Detecting energy signatures, multiple sources, they're all around us." Looked at the display. Red dots were appearing everywhere, surrounding his fleet in a sphere of hostile contacts. But that was impossible. His sensors had shown empty space just moments before. Where had these contacts come from? The answer came a heartbeat later when the first weapons fired. What looked like dead asteroids came alive with weapons fire. What looked like drifting debris revealed itself as hidden missile platforms. What looked like empty space was suddenly filled with thousands of mines, hidden by stealth technology that they had never encountered before. The first volley hit his fleet like a thunderstorm. Missiles designed specifically to penetrate armor slammed into his ships. Mines detonated against hulls, their shaped charges cutting through metal like knives through flesh. Energy weapons from hidden platforms struck engines and weapon systems with surgical precision. "Return fire," bellowed. "Destroy those platforms." His ships responded, their massive weapons tearing through space, obliterating the hidden installations one by one. But for every platform they destroyed, a dozen missiles were already in flight. For every mine they cleared, 10 more appeared from hidden dispensers. And then the human fleet attacked. They did not come in a traditional formation. They did not approach in a line or a wedge or any configuration they had ever seen before. They came in small groups of 5 ships each, moving with perfect coordination, striking at the edges of the formation, and then withdrawing before the massive alien ships could respond. "They're using hit-and-run tactics," reported, his voice tight with frustration. "They strike, cause damage, and retreat before we can engage properly. Our weapons cannot track targets that small moving that fast." "Then don't track them," snarled. "Flood the area with fire, destroy everything in their path." But the human ships were not in any path. They danced through space like predators circling wounded prey, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted, never giving the guns a clear shot. They were small and fast and impossibly agile, and they knew exactly where to strike. Because they had studied them for 40 years. They knew every weakness in ship design. They knew where the armor was thin, where the reactors were vulnerable, where the weapons systems had blind spots. And they exploited every single weakness with ruthless efficiency. The first battleship died 20 minutes into the engagement. Human bombers had targeted its reactor cooling systems, destroying them with precise missile strikes. The reactor overheated and exploded, taking the ship and its crew of 3,000 warriors with it. The second battleship died 10 minutes later, when a squadron of human fighters lured its point defense systems to track them, while a stealth missile slipped through and detonated against its bridge. The third, fourth, and fifth died within minutes of each other, victims of coordinated strikes that overwhelmed their defenses from multiple directions at once. Watched his fleet bleeding and felt something he had not experienced since he was a young warrior in his first battle. He felt uncertain. "How many ships have we lost?" he demanded. 17, Admiral, with another 32 damaged. "And the humans?" "They've lost 11 ships so far." The mathematics was wrong. They should have been crushing the humans by now. They outnumbered them out-armored them. By every measure of traditional warfare, they should have been winning easily. But this was not traditional warfare. This was not the kind of battle they knew how to fight. And then it got worse. "Admiral," the sensor officer called out, "detecting new contacts, massive energy signatures. They're coming from behind the human defense lines." The display updated. Ships were emerging from behind Earth, from hidden bases on the moon, from positions throughout the system that had seemed empty just hours before. But these were not the small, fast ships that had been dancing around the fleet. These were something else entirely. Had called them the dreadnoughts. They were humanity's answer to size and power. Each one was as large as a battleship, built with armor forged in orbital foundries using techniques that humanity had developed specifically to fight the Dominion. They carried weapons that had never been used in combat before, weapons designed to punch through the thickest hull plating. And there were 50 of them. "Fire all batteries," commanded from the bridge of the Defiance. "Maximum rate, don't give them time to react." The dreadnoughts opened fire, and the universe seemed to scream. Concentrated plasma lances tore through space, each one carrying enough energy to power a city for a year. They struck ships and kept going, burning through armor that nothing should have been able to penetrate. Rail guns fired projectiles at fractions of light speed, kinetic weapons that hit with the force of nuclear explosions. The fleet, already bleeding from the fighter attacks, now faced annihilation. Ship after ship died. Explosions bloomed across the formation like flowers of fire. Warriors who had thought themselves invincible found their mighty vessels crumbling around them. Some tried to fight back, but their weapons could not crack the dreadnought armor. Some tried to flee, but the human ships were faster. And then came the boarding parties. Was directing his surviving ships when the alert sounded. Breaching pods were striking his flagship, dozens of them, punching through the hull and disgorging human soldiers into the corridors of the eternal conquest. "Repel boarders," he roared. "All warriors engage." The humans came in armored suits that made them look like mechanical monsters. They moved with terrifying speed, their suits amplifying their already formidable physical abilities. They carried weapons designed to pierce hide, and they used them with lethal efficiency. But the most terrifying thing about them was their eyes. Saw it through the security feeds, watched as his warriors engaged the human boarders. The humans had eyes that burned with something he had never seen in any species before. It was not just determination. It was not just courage. It was rage. Pure, focused, controlled rage. They were angry. They were angry that they had come to destroy their home. They were angry about every species the Dominion had enslaved. They were angry about 10,000 years of tyranny and cruelty and conquest. And they were channeling all of that anger into the most devastating military force the galaxy had ever seen. A human soldier met one of his guards in the corridor outside the bridge. The guard was 3 meters tall, covered in golden armor skin, strong enough to bend metal with his bare hands. The human was less than 2 meters, soft and fragile behind that armored suit. The guard swung a massive fist. The human ducked under it, moving faster than should have been possible. The human's blade came up, sliding between the guard's armor plates, finding the soft tissue beneath. The guard staggered. The human struck again, and again, a whirlwind of precise violence that ended with the dead on the floor. Watched this happen over and over through the security feeds. His warriors, the greatest fighters in the galaxy, were dying to these small, soft creatures. They were being outfought, outmaneuvered, outmatched by beings that should have been easy prey. And then the bridge doors exploded. Turned, raising his weapon, as human soldiers poured into his command center. They moved with terrifying coordination, each one covering the others, each one knowing exactly where to be and when to be there. His bridge officers tried to fight, but they were not warriors. They died quickly. And then faced the leader of the boarding party. She removed her helmet, and he recognized her from the transmission earlier. Admiral, the human commander, stood before him with a weapon in one hand and a blade in the other. Her face was splattered with golden blood, her eyes burning with that same rage he had seen in all of them. "Admiral," she said, "your fleet is destroyed, your empire is falling. You have one chance to survive this day. Order your remaining ships to surrender." Looked at her. This small creature standing in his bridge, surrounded by his dead officers, demanding his surrender. 1,000 years ago, he would have laughed. 100 years ago, he would have torn her apart with his bare hands. But he had seen what these creatures could do. He had watched them destroy the greatest fleet the Dominion had ever assembled. He had watched them fight with a fury that all logic, all reason, all understanding. "Why do you fight so hard?" he asked. "Other species surrendered rather than face us. They knew they could not win. They chose survival through submission. Why not you?" Looked at him for a long moment. "Because we are human," she said. "Because we would rather die free than live as slaves. Because our ancestors clawed their way up from nothing, fighting every step of the way, and they passed that spirit on to us. Because we look at tyrants like you and we see everything we've spent our entire history fighting against. And because we believe down to our bones that freedom is worth dying for." She raised her weapon. "Now surrender or die, your choice." Considered his options. He was the greatest warrior of the greatest warrior species in the galaxy. His strength echoed through time, through 10,000 years of victory and conquest. He should have fought. He should have died with honor as a should. But he had seen something today that changed everything he thought he knew. He had seen that strength was not enough. He had seen that power was not enough. He had seen that these humans, these death world creatures, had something that they had never encountered before. They had will. They had spirit. They had a refusal to accept defeat that went beyond anything biological, anything physical, anything that could be measured or. They fought not because they were strong, but because they could not imagine doing anything else. They fought because they were human, and fighting against impossible odds was what humans did. "I surrender," said. Nodded, She did not gloat. She did not mock him. She simply accepted his surrender with the same professional efficiency that she had displayed throughout the battle. "Wise choice," she said. "Your war is over." Outside, in the void of space, the remnants of the fleet were surrendering one by one. Of the 300 ships that had come to destroy humanity, fewer than 40 remained. Of the 1 million warriors who had boarded those ships, fewer than 50,000 still lived. The greatest military force the galaxy had ever seen had been crushed in a single day by creatures that had never won a galactic war before, that had only been traveling among the stars for a few centuries, that came from a small blue world at the edge of nowhere. And across the galaxy, in every enslaved colony on every subjugated world, news of the battle spread. The Dominion was broken. Their strength, which had echoed through time for 10,000 years, had finally met something stronger. The slaves began to rise. The shattered their chains, the burned their masters' estates, the flooded their oppressors' cities. Species that had lived in fear for suddenly remembered that they too had been warriors once. They too had been free once, and they could be free again. Stood on the bridge of the captured eternal conquest and watched the galaxy change. She thought about all the humans who had died to make this moment possible, all the soldiers who had given their lives, all the families who would never see their loved ones again. She thought about Earth, still floating peacefully behind her, 8 billion people who would never know how close they had come to extinction. And she thought about the future. The Dominion would fall. The coalition of free species would rise. A new era was beginning, an era where tyranny would not be tolerated, where slavery would not be accepted, where the strong would not simply crush the weak. An era shaped by humans. Behind her was led away in chains, the first admiral ever captured alive. He would spend the rest of his life in a human prison, forced to watch as everything he had fought for crumbled to dust, but suspected that, on some level, he understood. On some level, he respected what they had done. Because they understood strength, and today they had learned that strength came in many forms. Sometimes it was physical power, sometimes it was advanced technology, sometimes it was ruthless tactics. But sometimes the greatest strength of all was simply the refusal to give up, the determination to keep fighting no matter the odds, the will to stand in front of an overwhelming enemy and say, "No, not today, not ever." That was human strength. That was the strength that had echoed through 200,000 years of human history, from the first cave paintings to the first moon, landing to the first colony ship leaving Earth's atmosphere. And that was the strength that had broken the Dominion. The Armada had answered the challenge. Humanity had faced the full force of the galaxy's greatest empire and had not just survived but triumphed. The message was clear to every species, every tyrant, every would-be conqueror who might look toward Earth with hungry eyes. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was the most dangerous thing to ever evolve on one of the most dangerous worlds in the galaxy. And they were just getting started. The golden age of galactic freedom was beginning, built on the foundation of human courage, human sacrifice, human determination, built on the bones of an empire that had thought itself invincible, built on the truth that they had finally learned, too late to save themselves. Their strength had echoed through time, but humanity's echoed louder.